Welcome to Puck Talk CS. Matt Mugno, the prospect Don. I just feel like that's the best way to introduce someone, actually. Fellow Paisan.
Italian.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
had a slice from a place in town, Chicken Delight, and that just comes to mind when I think of the prospect Don.
Ah,
Um, Obviously, New York Rangers podcast here, and I told you right off the bat, for this show tonight, for all of the amazing listeners of ours, like I don't know anything going into this draft. So this is going to be the most fun experience to talk to someone that does know plenty going into this draft, talks to the prospects. Can you tell everyone what you do? Because I've admired your page for a long time, but for anyone that hasn't come across your stuff, I want them to know exactly what you're about.
yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that, Matt. I get to interview the players. I'm the owner of Draft Prospects Hockey, which is one of the leading digital content creation for around prospects. So we get a lot of the interviews. We're partnered with a lot of these leagues, and we're starting to grow enormously. I have a new mock draft simulator site with rankings as well as like a GM cap space mode. So I just created the cap space mode that went live today. Actually, that was been in the works for a very long time. So as you can see how lively I am on Twitter, I'm actually like always having to watch these guys. I have to create so many of these websites and stuff, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I appreciate everybody that allows me time to talk hockey, because it's honestly what I was going to do anyway if I didn't have a platform. But interviewing the prospects has just been something I've fallen in love with, getting to know them as people, their personalities, kind of sharing more of a limelight on their strengths. And I know the NBA is starting to do that too. So I think the NHL needs to actually start pushing this more in terms of the personalities and the strengths of players and trying to push them out, because I mean what they do is just fantastic and we should learn more about them. And I feel like this is a growing industry, but it like we are at the starting point of it. As people are getting more used to cameras and people are understanding like the players are like how good they are in front of a camera, because the lights and cameras are always around you. You should be good at cameras, and if you're not, then I think that the practice helps, especially as you're draft eligible. So that's sort of what I do. I try to help as many players get ready for the combine as possible. And our scouts are incredible. We have so many scouts that work at Draft Prospects Hockey and the contributors. So I really appreciate everybody that does that, that's contributing there. So yeah, that's the long spiel on who I am. But thank you.
Of course, of course. And without further ado, obviously some great playoff games tonight. So I can't keep you for too long talking about a team that looks like they might be in like this, rebuild, retool for 2 to 3 years or whatever. But off the jump, can you summarize the difference between picks 1 and 2 to like that 2 to 3 or like 2 to 5 range? It feels like there's this almost like terrace farming of the way the draft order is this year. So I was curious if I'm sure you've talked about it till you're blue in the face, but how would you describe the drop off from like the 1-2 spot onward?
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit of a overreaction in terms of the people that are saying like this is a 1 and 2 player draft. But in terms of some of the teams fits, like it is. If you're looking at the Blackhawks, like they don't need a defenseman. So for them, it might be a 3-man draft and they're 4. So like if you have Caleb Maholtra in that tier of a Stenberg and McKenna, then it's going to be, important for you to try to trade up unless the Sharks go full defenseman there. But this is a great draft because you have 4 or even 5 top pair defensemen that have that potential in this class. And then you have the elite forwards, who I think McKenna is definitely better than anybody else. I think that, we shouldn't be underselling what he brings to the table. He's an elite franchise winger that could be, elite for 10 to 15 years. He can have that Nikita Kucherov type of like value. And in terms of what you're seeing out of Demidov, like he's a multiplier for a team. Like Demidov is better defensively than McKenna, but I think McKenna holds way more offensive potential than forwards that we've seen come out in recent years in the draft. And when you're looking at like what he's not. He's not a center. So, he's not going to have that skyrocketing value that Bedard or Celebrini had. And he's not that great defensively in terms of 5-on-5, and his B game isn't the greatest. So when you look at a guy like Ivar Stenberg, he can be more of a complete player than McKenna. So I think that those two guys are capable of being in the same tier, but I would still have McKenna because of the star power. And then you look at a guy like Caleb Malhotra, who's 6'2". He does everything well. He is an extremely talented offensive player. His playmaking is great, and his vision is fantastic, and his puck handling and his hands are awesome. And he's not afraid to take a hit to make a play, or get into the center of the ice, or work down low near the net. But at the same time, he's fantastic defensively. He does need some more help in the faceoff percentages, but he's the best center in the entire draft class. And then you look at the defense. Like this is 4 or 5 defenders that can be a top pair defenseman in a class. And when have you ever seen that in terms of they're all over 6'2"? So I feel like this is a very good class if you're where the Rangers are picking, or if you're in the top 7. But at the same time, I do think that there's a bigger drop-off after a guy like Carroll's or Smits goes at the end, because like Viggio Bjork is only 5'10". If he was 6'2", I think that this would be an 8-man draft as well. And you also have Daxon Rudolph or Xavier Villeneuve. Like, there are some guys with absurd potential.
Oh, dude, you are just like a wealth of knowledge. Like, I just feel like I am going on a speed run of actually understanding. Like, there's a lot out there. I feel like it just helps to talk to someone and listen to someone that has like a true pulse on it, because everything that I'm sure I'm looking through, and every one of our listeners is like, probably sifting through, trying to figure out, what's the best thing to gravitate towards knowledge base wise. So I really appreciate it. And like, if you're looking at picks, I guess 3, 4, right before the Rangers, what's the approach for Vancouver, San Jose, and Chicago? And how does that impact the New York Rangers at number 5?
Yeah, here's like, it's interesting because you can go into like what you would do mock draft or what the team would do, and it's completely different things. And when you look at the Sharks, like, they should be taking a defenseman, but at the same time, like, okay, so like, say you have Ivar Stenberg ranked at a 9.6, and you have Chase Reed ranked at a 9.5, or even a Keaton Verhoff at a 9.5. I think you still end up going right-handed defenseman, because at the same time, like, yeah, you get the elite forward, but you already have so many top 6 elite forwards. So what would you do? I would try to trade down. You already know the Canucks or the Blackhawks are going to overpay for that pick, as well as you could get Snyder plus the Rangers 5th overall pick, and still get incredible defensive value, because you're still taking the second defenseman off the board. So say like Carson Carroll goes number 1 to the Blackhawks, because they truly do need a fit on that left-handed side near where Kevin Korchinski is. And then, I don't know if they're necessarily going to take a right-handed defenseman. So you could still get your number 1 guy. Like Carson Carroll's on the Rangers could be the 4th defenseman on their board, but the Blackhawks could have him number 1. Or Albert Smits could go number 1, which I could totally see the Blackhawks doing, and the Rangers have him 5th. I mean, they could have Daxon Rudolph over Albert Smits. This is one of those weird draft classes where we don't have that solidified defenseman. But if the Sharks have one that they think, hey, we need a right-handed defenseman, and it's extremely hard to get that position, then it's so much better for the Canucks and the Blackhawks, because the Canucks could get Stenberg, because we just seen the Sedin twins get promoted. They're going to go Stenberg. I mean, the last time we saw an SHL 18-year-old with almost 40 points in the SHL was actually Daniel Sedin in 1999, and then he went 3rd overall to the Canucks. So when you look at what Stenberg did, I think he had 34 points in 40-something games. In the SHL, he won gold. He's a complete player. You take that guy as the second forward off the board. But also, like, Caleb Malhotra might play with his dad. He grew up a Canucks fan. He grew up with, obviously, like, Manny Malhotra is the Abbotsville AHL coach. So he could be the interim, or he could be the internal hire that the Canucks have as their head coach. So if he does end up being the head coach, are you going to want Caleb Malhotra on your team? I spoke to Coach Petey, who's a video coach for 20-plus years for the Arizona Coyotes today, and he was talking about how it might be a little harder to be the number 1 draft pick with your dad as the head coach, because he might be either harder on you, or it's going to create some locker room issue or whatever it is, but it might not be a perfect fit. I mean, we're coming at it in a way of a strength that's a pro. It might be a con. So will they not go in that route of a Caleb Malhotra if they hire Manny Malhotra? It's going to be an interesting one. But at the same time, like, I think the Blackhawks and the Canucks both want forwards. Like, we've heard this for the Sharks. I think that there's a way that you can trade for that pick if you are, say, 1-7. I don't see a scenario where they trade out to, like, the Panthers or another pick, because one, they're going to want a top pair defenseman in that class. You're not going to be able to just get that pick. You're going to have to give them some significant things that they don't already have, because the Sharks are one of the richest teams in prospect pipeline land. Like, at the same time, like, you're going to have to give them something that they don't have, which is defense. So they're going to need that top pair defenseman. With that said, you could go in a multitude of different directions. We saw Corey Pronman have McKenna 4th and Stenberg 5th on his rankings, which vaulted up the defenseman. So I don't necessarily know how GMs and scouts see this draft in terms of the defenseman. They could have a similar ranking as Corey Pronman, and this conversation doesn't even exist that they go forward. So I love this class. It's hilarious that the Leafs and the Sharks both won the lottery. You should have seen my face on the stream. I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I got text from my family, like, you have to at least smile. Stop being depressed. Like, I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I can't fake this. But at the same time, it resets all the conversations I've had for 3 months. So it is funny.
No, it is. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I always say, like, I think from the marketing standpoint, which is great, it's so important, like you said too, to bring these guys into the fold. College hockey's leading the way. USHL has become very popular. So it's very important for all that media exposure. It's important for the marketing of the NHL. But in reality, you never quite know what's going to happen, right? Like, it's fun to look in hindsight. But I've learned, you can't really Monday morning quarterback, and going in. Every team, like you said, every club's got a different draft board. Now, you mentioned the Sharks a lot there. And I think something I'd like to either, I guess, gauge on, but also maybe disprove if it's not true, is like, how much value is the conversation right now of the New York Rangers trading up for that number 2 pick? Like, do you think that's valid, or do you think they would need, like, to give up pretty much the stock to get that pick?
It's interesting because I don't even know what the Sharks would want. Like, they probably would not even care for EJ Emery, if we're being honest. Like, maybe I don't know if EJ Emery is enough to get the 2nd pick from the 5th overall pick. But at the same time, I think it would be just a free prospect, because you might be selecting the exact same player. I mean, if it's Liam Greentree and EJ Emery plus the 5th overall pick, like, why would the Rangers even do that at that point? Like, you don't want to ruin everything you got. Like, I love Liam Greentree. I think he's just a fantastic player, one of the smartest players we've seen in the OHL in years. Like, he's so dynamic. He had 100+ points for a reason, and this year was a down year for him, and he still put up so many points. Like, I think that was a great trade with Panarin, because your backs were against the wall. You couldn't necessarily negotiate in any sort of way. So to get Liam Greentree is fantastic, and they do have some assets, but this is not a team that has, like, for some reason, they even traded for a player for a 1st-round pick recently, and they were clearly not going anywhere. So this team should have been trading all of their assets away, and now they still have Adam Fox, they still have Shesterkin. I do think that they can just clean this up. You could easily get the 9th pick from Florida for Shesterkin, even though you can get way more than that. But if they wanted to really blow the door off of this and just start rebuilding, they can do that. Like, if they wanted to blow, like, you can easily get the 5th pick or the 2nd overall pick for probably Adam Fox without even the 5th pick at this point. Like, you can easily get that, because that's an established defenseman that the Sharks need ASAP, because they're going on a playoff run. So you can be creative with this. Obviously, I don't think the Sharks or the Rangers should trade Adam Fox or Shesterkin, but I think they need to pick a direction. I think that if you are going to be good in the near future, then you're going to have to trade a lot of assets to try to acquire young talent or acquire talent already. But the Rangers have already done that. The Rangers also traded Panarin because they knew, like, first of all, he wanted to be on a contender. He wanted out. But at the same time, like, how are you going to replace what Panarin does. And I know he's 34, 35. He was almost past his prime, and he was a rookie at 24, which people seem to forget about. Like, he's only played in the NHL very few, like 10 years, which is crazy now. But at the same time, like that's not a 18-year-old that came in the NHL. He was 6 years older than a rookie drafted, 7 years. So at the same time, like they needed to do that. But the Rangers can go creative. They have a lot of good players on their roster. They should not have traded a first-round pick for, or they could get assets back for Trocheck as well, I believe, right? Because he's in the trade market right now. Who's the other guy that they just Miller, right? JT Miller.
Yep.
You gave a first round pick to him.
Yeah, and I mean, fortunately for that situation, they kept this year's pick. The part of the trade was either forfeiting the pick, and because of the Penguins trade, it ended up being the Penguins pick. So yeah, not the best situation, but at least if you're going by where they're selecting higher this year. So they just got really lucky that this year ended up being worse than last year, I guess, in that regard.
So that would have been 11 or 12 last year.
I think it was 11 or 12 last year. I'll pull it up. And I'm glad
because they took 11 Kindle.
Because, yeah, it must have been that pick.
And then, at 12, they traded back with the Flyers, and they got 2 first-round picks, which was great value. So I want to see if they stayed with Kindle there. That's an interesting one.
While I'm pulling that up, you mentioned Liam Greentree, which I think a lot of fans are like eager to know about him as a prospect. I think a lot of everything I've seen is like he's like the OHL juggernaut. Like he's scoring, he's got grit, he can be physical. He had obviously 2 great years, but I think most Ranger fans are concerned because the running joke on Broadway is that they're always drafting guys that like there's always a skating concern. And I feel like that was the first thing that everyone latched onto when they traded for him.
I'm trying to pull up my Liam Greentree interview. I forgot what. Okay. So I don't know if you could hear that, but he modeled his game after Matthew Tkachuk. I interviewed him live in Windsor. Like, I don't even remember when that was. That was, like March, somewhere in March. Late March, and he's just a phenomenal player. Like 6'3" power forward who has hit like a ton of points. He had 119 points last year and 49 goals in 64 games played. The only knock on him was his skating. And when I went to go see him, I thought his skating was fantastic. I mean, they have a lot of good skaters there. They have AJ Spellici in Windsor, who's a 6'2", just power skater. But at the same time, like, he's a hitter. So AJ Spellici also grew up playing football. He's one of the weird ones where it's like AJ Spellici has a ton of potential, but no one's talking about him. They have Ethan Belchez, who's a 6'5", 227-pounder, who got hurt actually like 2 weeks after I talked to him in March. But at the same time, like, this is a guy that has absurd skill too. And you put a guy like Liam Greentree next to him, and he was fantastic. I think Liam Greentree is actually going to have an easier start to his NHL career than Gabe Perreault, because I got to talk to Gabe Perreault as well, and I don't remember. It was before the season in the prospect showcase, the rookie showcase. And the thing about Gabe Perreault is he's one of those guys that, his father had a lot of connections in the NHL. This is a guy that is PR trained. He's just solely focused on hockey, and I love that about Gabe Perreault. This is a guy that's just always like very good demeanor, but he's like locked in at whatever he's doing. And the thing about Gabe Perreault is he was a little smaller, and you could tell that it was going to take a bit of development in his game. With Liam Greentree, I think he's developed fantastic. I think he's going to have an easier transition to the NHL than a guy like Gabe Perreault, and I think that he could be a top 6 forward for you, a power forward that you kind of need on the power play too, and he has a good shot. So I'm very excited for Liam Greentree. I think he's one of the best OHL players we saw this year, and it's very easy to just spot him when he's playing because he's a big guy with a lot of skill.
Oh, I love that. That's it. I mean, I think the fan base will like to hear something, I guess, positive and refreshing in that regard, especially as with prospects in New York. It's never never easy. It looks like that pick was traded, wow, like 1,000 times. That 12 pick was ended up being Jack Nesbitt. So from
Yeah.
the trade for JT Miller.
Yeah, it was like
To
Nesbitt, then they
put
picked
a bow
up,
on that, right?
I think they picked up Bill Zonin and someone else, but I don't remember who the someone else was. And they might have even traded back out.
That was wild. I mean, even the fact that there was the condition that the Rangers were basically forfeiting the pick to Pittsburgh was like crazy.
Yeah.
We don't see that too often. I guess that was something else that obviously came to mind in this conversation is you talked about, how they have the assets that they want to move up. And I think that's a big conversation with, the number 5 pick, the Sharks giving up number 2 potentially. But how we don't really see those moves often. Does this feel like a draft because there's not really a big free agency or all the free agents are locked up that we really could see some movement in that first round or some trades on draft night?
Yeah, I think that it's going to happen because when you look at this draft, there's clear team fits in terms of what they need, and I feel like a big one is just the Sharks, and I feel like another big one is like the Blackhawks. Like the Blackhawks are not going to want like 4th pick was the worst case scenario for them. Like if they were top 3, I don't think they would be shopping this pick. If the Sharks decide at the combine that everybody is talking about them taking a defenseman, the Blackhawks still have to shop that pick because a team like the Rangers or the Flames, like the Flames have 35th and 36th and the Vegas pick, like they could jump up to 2. So even if the Sharks have determined they want a defenseman, the Blackhawks are going to be scared because until they pick a defenseman at that pick, the Sharks or the Blackhawks have to believe that that pick is going to get traded. In terms of them shopping for Matthew Nyes, like the Blackhawks should not be trading for Matthew Nyes. One, if you're already talking about the 4th pick and something else, like the Blackhawks are just going to get fleeced. I do not trust the Blackhawks to trade the 4th pick and 2 other pieces because one of those is probably going to be an incredible right-handed defenseman. And at that point, it's just like, what do we like? At that point, you're going to need the 4th overall pick. So it just scares me when you have all those assets because I feel like you could tend to overpay and it might not work out for you. And when you look at like exactly this draft, like there should be at least one top 10 pick traded. I know that you even are looking at like the Panthers. The Panthers could trade that pick at 9. I mean, they need a goaltender. I would love it. I would absolutely love to see the Panthers and the Jets somehow figure out a way that Hellebuck could go to the Panthers because I think it would be fun. I wouldn't want it for the league, but I just think that we need to see more action here. The NHL is finally getting the views that they deserve in terms of how the increase is going. Like the NBA right now, they had LeBron James and Victor Wembanyama and Kevin Durant, Ant Edwards, all, like Jokic, all in the playoffs at the same time. And the NHL was actually starting to gain more viewership in terms of the year-over-year numbers. It was like 141% in the first round. And then even at the NFL draft, there was a Flyers chant that going on there. So like when you look at the sport, like there needs to be more entertainment. I think also since it's decentralized, we're going to hear a lot more about how much easier it is to be decentralized in their own room, in their own homes. Just like you have home turf, I think you're more okay with doing stuff because before it was a centralized draft, which I absolutely love. I think it's great. Other than the hotel rooms probably skyrocketing, but at the same time, like you get all of that noise there, people are terrified. They want to make the move. Like if you see somebody just get up to the bathroom, they're nervous. So I liked that. I liked the energy in that. Every time someone got up, it was like, oh, this guy got up, blah, blah, blah. You can't see that with the decentralized or the draft. So, I hope that we start to see more top 10 trades because it should be fun. Like this should be just the best event of the NHL season.
Now, I hate to be the guy that's like, hey, let's bring it back to the Rangers. But I think the most important conversation here is to talk to me elementary about the defenseman available, right? Because you talked earlier about and painted a great picture about Malhotra and like, obviously the Rangers could need a center too, right? If Trocheck goes, they have been thin at center for my entire life. But it seems like they really could take one of the defensemen available. But I think that where I'm confused, and I think I actually speak for the entire fan base here, like, what is the difference between these defensemen? Is their strengths of what are their strengths? What are their identity? Are they stay at home? Are they power play guy? I know Carroll's is a great skater. Like, educate me, educate everyone listening on who these guys are and like what they're about.
Yeah, I never really put anything on my screen whenever I'm like on a recording because I get asked the same questions over and over. But this is my favorite question I get asked over and over because it's just like I can nerd out on these guys. Like Albert Smeets for me is a player that when you look at his game, he's the most NHL pro ready defenseman. He's so athletic. He has, I mean, just shout out Brock Otten from McKean's because he was telling me on like what to look for with athleticism, especially in hockey, because I think it's way easier to find that out in the NFL or the NBA. When you're looking at a corner or like a shooting guard, you could see how athletic they are. I think it's a little bit different in the NHL and or in hockey. But in terms of like Albert Smeets, he has a good shot. I think I'll go back to Keaton Verhoff, who has the heaviest shot in the class. But in terms of like Albert Smeets, like this is a guy that was playing great for Latvia in both the World Juniors and the Olympics. He ran over Leon Draisaitl in the corner. I feel like when you're looking at an Albert Smeets, this guy has really good hands, and he's a prototype 6'3" left-handed defenseman that is physical, and you are not going to want to play against. The only thing that, kind of pushes him off of that top pair defenseman is he going to be able to get 40, 45 points in a season? Like, what's his best offensively? I think he's a great breakout passer. He's a good short, accurate passer. He has a good shot. He can maneuver well. He does have some of that stellar puck handling that we did see in Liga, than we did see at in Germany, because he's playing at both of those pro leagues this year, and he showed how NHL ready he is. It's just, for me, the offensive skill set. The best offensive skill set in this entire draft in the defensive side at these picks, because I think Xavier Villeneuve rocks the blue line better than anyone, but for a guy that's over 6'2", it is Chase Reed for me, right-handed defenseman out of the Sioux. Like, when you watch the Sioux, they're a team that's going to hurt you. And they obviously have Brady Martin, who's already one of the best hitters in the entire class, who's a farm boy, which we'll get to farm boys with Carson Carrolls. But in terms of, like, Chase Reed, he's a great shot. He said to me at the World Juniors that he modeled his game after Zach Werenski. I could totally see something like that happening where he's a two-way defenseman. This is a guy that in the USHL 2 years ago, he played 10 games and he had 0 points. He went to the OHL and he started dominating. The progression and the inflection point in his game has just continued to rise, and that's what you want to see. The NHL year-over-year progression of a player in their draft year is huge, and no player did that more than defensively than a guy like Chase Reed in the last 2 years. I think offensively it's been Caleb Malhotra and Wyatt Cullen, but in terms of like a defenseman, I think it's been actually Chase Reed, someone that thinks that his defense is actually underrated. I asked him, what's one underrated aspect of your game that you think goes overlooked? He said his defense, and I think it's interesting. He is really good in transition. I think that he can close gaps defensively pretty well. When you're watching him skate, I really do like his four-way mobility. I think that he is one of those guys that, is tough to push off pucks. He's good around the boards. He's going to be able to win those puck battles as he gets more experience. With Keaton Verhoff, this guy grew up a goalie, which is very interesting to me. You don't really see that, but he did grow up a goalie, and this is a guy that needs more experience, because when he played in the WHL during his D-1 year, which is before his draft year, he looked fantastic. He was a really great skater. I just saw those acceleration in the bursts. And then once he went to the NCAA, who he is the youngest defenseman in the NCAA by a long shot, he had a lot of issues. Like, there was issues with the decision making. There was issues when he was getting pressured by forwards. I didn't think that he had the puck on his stick enough. So when you try to evaluate this guy, I was at the Western Michigan game. He had the puck on his stick for 15 seconds. I have no idea how he even got 20 points in 35 games at the NCAA level, because he never had the puck on his stick. Like, this is a guy that in the WHL last year for Victoria, like, this guy had so much time with the puck. He was one of the main QBs and play drivers on the back end in that league. And then once he goes to the NCAA, which he shouldn't have gone to, I hate when draft eligibles go to the NCAA, and I think it's going to continue to happen more and more with the NIL, because like you are ruining your draft stock, which could ultimately hurt your career forever. Because yes, you are going to take the NIL, and yeah, you are going to play against these older 22 to 25-year-olds, but at the same time, it's going to hurt your draft stock, and draft stock is everything in this sport. Obviously, you could look at Ethan Wittenbach, who was a 5th-round pick, who could have been drafted in the 1st round if he didn't even get drafted last season. So because of how good his season was, sometimes we just miss players, but at the same time, it's going to hurt his draft stock. I think when you have a guy that was drafted in the top 5 or 10, it sticks with you longer, and your leash is a little longer in the NHL. You get more opportunities. So I do not like Logan Hensler went to the NCAA last year and played for Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was great this season. But it's just like there are players that sometimes make the jump too early, and I think it's going to happen more. So if I were an advisor, I would try to tell people, like, it's going to help your development, maybe, but at the same time, go to the WHL, get your draft stock good, work for the draft stock, take a lot of pressure off of you. You're going to have an incredibly hard career. I mean, incredibly hard season in terms of all the interviews you have to do, all the other busy work, and the combine and the draft. There's a lot to think about. So maybe you don't take the biggest step in your career in your draft season. And I think that it did hurt Keaton Verhoff because he's an extremely skilled 6'4" right-handed defenseman with a ton of offensive ability. He just didn't get the chance to show that. And if he would have went to the WHL, he would have been the number 2 overall pick to the Sharks, in my opinion. And now we're thinking maybe he could actually fall to the Rangers. And if the Rangers get him, you're getting a superstar. And I haven't even talked about Carson Carrolls, who could be the best defenseman in this entire class. Like, Central Scouting put the 6'2" left-handed defenseman in the Cale Makar type of comp when they were looking at this guy's flashes. I call him Matthew Schaefer-Light-esque. Like, if there's a player that I think could be a left-handed defenseman that has the impact of Matthew Schaefer, both on offense and defense and in transition, I think it's Carson Carrolls, because one, he's a farm boy. He has that farm boy strength. He's a great efficient skater. He has a really good dangling ability, and he has good stick work as well. He has good fast hands. He has a really good shot. I think an NHL pro ready shot, especially his wrist shot. He's just he's complete in so many different ways. His B game is good. He is not afraid to hit you. He's actually one of the most physical defensemen in this class, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it. So all 4 of those guys can be top-pair defensemen. And we haven't even talked about Xavier Villeneuve, who I'm not going to talk about because I've been talking about for like 10 minutes and I want to get your question in there. But Xavier Villeneuve is 6th on Elite Prospects board. And he walks the blue line like he's a joystick defender, which is Lane Hudson or Quinn Hughes. When you look at this and haven't even talked about Daxon Rudolph or like Ryan Lynn, who are both in the top 10 this year in this class, it's just an incredibly deep defensive class. So like you should, if I had a top 5 pick and you have 3 guys in that range or 4 or 5 guys in that range, I'm trading down and try to get an asset and still getting the same player. That's what I would do.
Wow. Oh my gosh. This is going to be like the best listen back of all time. Like, I think I might have to listen to this like once a day until the draft. That was such a wealth of knowledge. I have a question. This is like a dumb question, but did you provide yourself with the Prospect On title, or was this like someone mentioned it to you and you're like, yeah, I got to go with that?
Yeah, it was actually my friend Casey. I thought it was, my last name is Donati, and I didn't know what the Don was, like, truthfully. And he was like, go Prospect Don. And I thought it was for Prospect Donati without the ATI. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Because I was Intel on ice for a little bit, and no one cared. And then I was like, Prospect Don. And then the logo is just like this. So like, I thought it was cool with the hockey stick. And yeah. I was like, I have to be this. And then I watched The Godfather, and I was like, what the heck? I can't do that. I can't be that guy. But I think it just worked out. It was an incredible name. I think Casey, he tells me that he needs like a stake in my business, but I'm like, it was a good name. I'll get him like a steak one day or something. But yeah. Yeah,
you'll get him dinner one time, you know.
One time.
I gotta say, just like listening to even the vocabulary you use, like joystick defenseman, like that's the stuff that you just can't get from anyone else. So I love that we're talking right now, and I'd only have a few more questions, but with that said, they're probably some of the most important for Ranger
Mhm.
fans because I think we got through the defenseman was the big like labyrinth answer, and I think that's the most important for anyone to listen to, even for myself to know moving forward. But there's a name that's popped up. Um, Bjork, what's going on over there? I know the last name. I know nothing about this prospect, and now I'm seeing like some folks are talking about how he could be a reach guy or like a top four, top five. So I feel like that also has to be talked about ahead of the draft before anything crazy happens.
Yeah, Vigo Bjork, pound for pound or inch for inch, because he's actually not that light of a player. He is one of the most talented players we've ever seen come out of Sweden in terms of the the skill and the like his royalty that he brings. Like his aunt is like the Madonna in Sweden, and when you watch this guy play, especially live, you're just like he is incredible. You see what Logan Stankoven's doing, and he plays like he's 6'4", so that's not a good comparison for Vigo because I think Vigo plays like he's 6 feet. But when you talk to other players like Victor Eklund said he's a Macklin Celebrini-esque guy. Vigo Bjork models his game after Sidney Crosby, and obviously he's not going to be a Sidney Crosby. But when you're 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", and are already throwing out the Sidney Crosby comp, that's when you know you have a lot of confidence. And this guy has it. He doesn't really have an ego, but he just knows that he's good, and his talent is fantastic. When I look at Vigo, I kind of look at like Roman Kanserov in terms of the type of value you can be getting, but I think that Vigo is better than Roman Kanserov. And Roman Kanserov, if you don't know, the Blackhawks just signed him today to his ELC, and he led the KHL in goals with 36 goals this year, I believe, as a 21-year-old. And you don't do that. Like for a guy like Vigo Bjork, I think he had 74 points in 42 games played in the J20 or U20 slash in the junior Swedish league. And the thing is, like, Anton Frandell had 7 points in 10 games in that same league in the same year. So, like, Vigo Bjork is absurd. But the thing is, if the Panthers didn't go on that run and it was a bunch of 5'10" guys that were leading their team to Stanley Cups, Vigo Bjork might be a top 3 player. But at the same time, like, we're to this point where everybody's trying to get as big as they possibly can. Like, there was not one sub 6-foot defender taken last year in the class, which is just absurd. I mean, you had a lot of good ones. Galvis and Lucas Radijevich didn't even get taken in the 6th or 7th round, and it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, those are clearly guys that are going to get taken in this class. So it's a weird league in terms of, do I think Vigo Bjork would be a top 5 pick? No. Do I think he should? Probably, because of the talent. But if he was 6'2", you'd be having a conversation on him versus McKenna. And the craziest part is he's listed at 5'10". Like, McKenna's listed at 5'11". Like, what are we doing here? Like, that 1 inch, like, honestly, Vigo Bjork plays a heavier game than McKenna, if we're just being honest. He's tougher to push off pucks. He's always so safe out there. He's protective of the puck. He doesn't make those stupid decisions out there. His two-way game is fantastic. His B game is great. I like thinking about it right now. I don't know why like we're not talking about Vigo Bjork in that McKenna race. I mean, he's not going to be in it, but at the same time, like, he's a 1 inch smaller, and it's such a big deal for some reason. And I believe, if I'm not wrong, what is Vigo Bjork, like 172 pounds? And I think McKenna, what is McKenna? McKenna is 170 from the last I checked. Yeah, Vigo's actually heavier. It says Gavin McKenna's listed at 6 feet, but neither Gavin McKenna or Ivar Stenberg are actually 6 feet. So I think that's interesting to me.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a weird one.
That's
because
crazy.
Vigo Bjork should be in that range.
Even the fact you just said he, I think what's funny is how often in hockey do we come back to the Cole Caulfield conversation,
Mhm.
right? Like with those players size wise. And I don't even think just for the New York Rangers, it's just about size. I think they need some sort of sure pick at number 5. And not only for the general manager's job, but I think for the sake of the future, like a lot hinges on this pick. And we've seen them blow so many of them before that I think they definitely want, if not the best player available, the best player that they know can at least play in the NHL.
You
I
know,
know
the
that sounds like, but
it's kind of interesting because like you go to the Vigo Bjork conversation, and some people have said that they believe that this is a center at the next level. If you take Vigo Bjork over one of the defensemen that have quote unquote top pair upside in our minds, which I think that there's 4, just pick your poison, and it's all based on development. Like this is hard. When I looked back, I don't know if you're a Jets fan, but they took who was it? They took Dave Bailey, the edge rusher, at number 2, and they didn't take Arvel Reese because Arvel Reese actually had more potential, but they wanted David Bailey because I felt like they could actually develop him, and they couldn't develop Arvel Reese. In terms of the Rangers, I don't know if they're going to have to go with a guy like Keaton Verhoff because they would have to put more time in his development, and maybe they go with Albert Smeets because he's going to be a top 4 lock, but he might not have that top 6 or the top pair upside. So when you look at a guy like Vigo Bjork, I think he's a safer player because I do believe he will be in the NHL. But at the same time, would I rather have a right-handed defenseman with top pair upside? Of course. Like that's more value than a Vigo Bjork. I think in like 2-3 years down the road, I could totally see Vigo Bjork being a top 3 player in the entire draft. Like he could be on one of those lists where it's like, how did he fall to 7 or whatever it is, like a Zach Benson. I don't know how he fell. A kid like a Cole Caulfield, somewhere in that realm. But it's like sometimes players just fall. Like Alex DeBrincat, I understood why he fell. That guy was super tiny, but at the same time, like he was still incredibly skilled, and he still figured it out. Like Vigo's not as tiny as those other guys, and I think it's just a little interesting that when we talk about like Vigo Bjork at 5'10", he's the same height as Connor Bedard. And Connor Bedard might be one of the like a top 10 player in the NHL. So maybe Vigo doesn't hit his full potential because he's not 6 feet, but why wouldn't he? So it's kind of interesting. But I think I would rather prefer the right-handed defenseman with top pair upside. But if both of them are gone, then I probably would just trade back and try to get Vigo because I do believe that there's going to be a team like the Panthers that are going to try to get in to that Albert Smeets type of like range.
You see the one name we haven't talked about, and I feel like you brought up a great point before about players jumping to NCAA and then kind of destroying their stock. I feel like Tynan Lawrence is that guy. Do you see a situation where the Rangers reach for a guy like that, or like how far down has he dropped down, like off the projection board?
Yeah, Tynan's an interesting one because I think you have to throw away that BU season. I know that some people have not, but at the same time, like BU was just terrible this year. Even Shilov today just was like, I'm not going there. He ended up going to Michigan State, which I think is much better for him. I posted a clip on Caleb Maholtra telling me he was going to BU. I would be interested to see if he's going to stay there because I don't know if you can trust that program right now. Not to say BU is bad. It's just like there's something going on there. And there's a reason people are leaving. In terms of Tynan, he could be like a top 6 center lock, but now we're seeing that there's people that think that he could be a 3C. When I watched the tape earlier in the season at the USHL, like I was like, wow, this guy's good, but offensively, what is he going to bring me to the table? Like defensively, he has defense like he could be a 1C. Like he could lock down players. I was talking to him and Colton St. Clair, his head coach at Muskegon, and they both said that he reminded them of like a Macklin Celebrini-esque guy. And Macklin obviously went to BU. So when you look at like if is he going to be a Macklin Celebrini guy? No, there's no shot at that. But is he going to be a guy that's going to be a very good center at the next level and be in multitude of different roles? Yeah. And for me, like when you're looking at a Tynan Lawrence, you kind of see a guy that you can easily project into your top 6. But now, like Corey Pronman had him ranked number 1 a couple months back. And now he released his rankings yesterday and he had him 16th. And I thought that was crazy in terms of where he had him. I mean, having a guy at number 1 and then having him at 16, something must have happened that was bad there in terms of he's getting some of his information from like scouts and GMs, that's why I think Corey is a great resource because he has that inside information and he's locked in on that. But I just thought it was kind of interesting to put a guy at number 1 and then all the way down to 16 because that's just a huge jump. Like you don't necessarily do that unless you think that the guy just can't play hockey at a high level anymore. And then he said he projects as a third line center. So that's like at one point it was a 1C, and then he went to BU, got exposed because again, you should not be going to the NCAA as a draft eligible. Like this is going to hurt a lot of players. Obviously, I think Celebrini and Fantilli ruined college hockey for all the other freshmen because even Gavin McKenna had one of the best seasons ever as a freshman in the NCAA, and they're still like, well, he didn't have Fantilli and Celebrini level. But it's just like, what are we talking about? They had insane seasons. So it's just unfortunate. If he would have stayed in the USHL, which was the perfect place for him to develop, he would have been on the trajectory of a top 5 guy. I think he would have been locked and loaded as the number 4 pick for the Blackhawks. Now it's to a situation where it's like he really might be a top 15 pick, and that's where he might be listed. I have no idea where he could fall. If the Rangers can still trade up into that range as well, keeping their top 5 pick, I would absolutely love them to do that. But at the same time, what's going to be the value? Because they still have Dallas Stars first round pick, and they do have some other assets that they can trade. I think that they have like 63, 67, and 77, and 81. They have 4 third-round picks. So I think they have the most third-round picks out of any team. If they wanted to, they could jump back in to that second round easily and also have the 63rd overall pick, so they could do that again. I think they could get a 3rd first-round pick if they really wanted one. But at the same time, like, how much do you want a Tynan Lawrence? Because I think you could just like restock those prospect pools. But I would throw Tynan's BU spot out the window, but I think it shows you he's not a top 5 pick. And I think that's good because a team that drafted him top 5 would have been, okay, go to the NCAA, and it would have happened last year. But yeah, it's interesting.
I'm glad you filled me in on Lawrence and that kind of situation because obviously a lot of fans brought the connection. Rangers seem to draft out of BU, BC. And at this point, the center position's a need. So talking about either Malhotra dropping, which I don't really know how much stock we should put into that conversation. I really think it's going to be a defenseman. But like you just mentioned, this Dallas Stars pick is the one that no one is talking about on Ranger airwaves. And actually, that might be the most important question that we talk about, which even though the number 5 pick is like a huge pivotal moment for the franchise, the 20 to 25 spot, I feel, is just as equal because if you draft a player that maybe you're more sure of at number 5, like that number 20 to 25 range seems like a spot where you could reach, or you could go for a player that maybe their stock fell. So what players do you think will be available with that Dallas Stars pick?
Yeah, that pick's going to be an interesting one because they can go in a multitude of different directions. They could go with a guy like Shilov if they do take a defenseman. I think it's going to come down to what they want. Like they could go Pantelis if they don't take a defenseman and a forward does drop there. They can use Vincent Trocheck and that pick to try to trade up into the top 10 or 5. I could totally see a scenario where that happens if a team that like a team that is okay with winning does want to still pick in the first round and get a guy like that. I know that the Leafs are very interested, but you're not going to get the first overall pick with that package. But at the same time, like they could get like an Adam Valentini, but I think that he could fall in the draft. I think he's very talented, and every prospect I've talked to said that at least one good thing about him. Yegor Shilov is a good one who just committed to Penn State. I would say like Brooks Rogowski is a fun one, 6'6", 6'7" center that could be an interesting player if he fully develops. He's playing in the OHL. I actually had a really good season. If Xavier Villeneuve was even close, I think you try to trade up one of those third-round picks and try to go get him. Adam Novotny could be a great middle six player for a team and could pot 30 goals on a season. I think Ilya Morozov is a fun one. He's 6'3", forward out of Miami, Ohio. Like he had good points. He was the youngest player in the NCAA until Oscar Hemming went there. Alexander Command would be a good one, like a good 3C or 2C for you. But I think that with the Rangers, you should target upside more. So like Liam, Marcus Ruck, maybe JP Hurlbert or Mathis Preston, all of those guys are very dynamic offensive forwards. I think that a good one, just off the top of my head, is like Maxim Sokolovsky, who's a big 6'8" left-handed defenseman, and I don't think he's being talked about enough. And same with like Nikita Sherbakov. Nikita Sherbakov, I think, was listed at 6'5", but now he's 6'3", which does hurt him in a way. But at the same time, he's a left-handed defenseman that played more on the right side. Malte Gustafsson, I don't think you're going to get anymore, but I thought that was like the perfect Rangers fit for me. Like regardless of what you did, Malte Gustafsson should have been higher in the boards. Well, I guess like William Hawkinson could be. I just talked to him, really good kid, but 6'4" left-handed defenseman that could be like a Nicholas Stromerson. I think that like he's kind of what you wanted in EJ Emery though. But if you draft him, what's that going to do on the shutdown line for EJ? So I think you'd want to probably stick with an offensive forward with upside like Ryan Rubrick is a guy that was supposed to be in the top 10. He had 40 goals his D-1 year. I think he had 30 this year. At the same time, like there's some effort issues. I think Elton Hermansson would be a great one. He has great hands. He showed a lot of skill internationally. He's a Swedish prospect that has absurd skill. I think that he would be a really fun one. I've fallen in love with his game. And then Maddox Dagenet, like this is a guy, I think his dad Pierre played for the Rangers, but 6'4", 200 pounds. This is one of the best reverse hitters I've ever seen at the World Juniors Championship U18s. Like he was pretty good. I think that like when you're looking at like Q prospects, it's a little interesting. But for me, I think he can still be there wherever the Rangers are picking there. And also Jack Hextall, I'll just throw that out. If there's one player I think that can be selected by the Rangers a little higher than consensus, it's Jack Hextall. So also, I'll throw on Ryder Colley there because Ryder Colley, he grew up in Switzerland, then moved to the Cayman Islands. Then he moved when he was 7 to Ontario. And the thing about him is he started playing hockey and skating at 7. So when you have that very short runway, it's pretty impressive what he's doing, and he's very skilled. He has really good hockey IQ, even though he just started playing, really. So I feel like Ryder Colley would be a good one. Shout out, again, Brock Otten, because he was one of the first to have him in his first round. So I think that's always fun when the guy has these guys in the first round and some have them in the third, because you're just taking a shot, and it's really fun to see that.
That is awesome. Oh my gosh. This is like, I'm telling you, to play this back about for the next month and a half is going to be invaluable, not only to myself, but I hope to everyone that listens to the show tonight. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. I want to give you the platform just to say anything that you got coming up, or, you know, anything that you're working on right now, right before the draft. I feel like this is the prime time for you.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm working on like trying to get sleep, but I can't do that. So in terms of like Draft Prospects Hockey is a great service in terms of like a lot of our stuff is like free right now, but we're trying to monetize in a way that like we can continue to grow as a company. But like we have the simulator, we have the rankings all on draftprospectshockey.com. We have the cap franchise GM now that just went live today, so it's still in beta. But we've gotten great feedback already from that, and it's just a new cap site that you can sign players to, like UFAs, RFAs. It takes out your picks if you do sign them. Takes the compensation out. You can sign your prospects to ELCs, so you can put them in the lines, and then you can sign free agents even in 2027 or 2028 to try to build your lines. And also, like I had this like Don AI architect that would try to plan how you can build your championship, but it was too harsh on the people. It said like the Blackhawks were like a 2 out of 10 and they'll never be the Panthers. So I took it out because I was like, that's so mean. But that might come in later. But that would certainly be in beta, because when you run into stuff like that, it's just interesting. But I just wanted to see if it would work, and it did work. But I think it was too mean. But in terms of the scouting reports, we have all of our stuff there. I just dropped my mock draft as well in written form, and everything in that mock draft just talks about like the top 16 players with all of their strengths, weaknesses, as well as quotes, like all quotes from them in terms of the player comp. So if you want that in one place, you could just bookmark that page and kind of have that info, because yeah, this is the busy time. So I appreciate you for coming on, and yeah, thank you so much, and enjoy the games tonight.
Oh, you too, of course. And like I said, I'm gonna link everything below, and I'm gonna be putting it out because this stuff this time of year, like I said, New York, they love their hockey, but to know what's going on at the levels
Yeah.
below, it's sometimes feels like you're kind of searching all over, and it didn't seem very direct with this upcoming draft pick. So thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And again, I hope we see a good draft this year, one with a lot of action, like you'd mentioned on the Effie as well.
I hope that everybody has a great draft. That's all you can hope for, and I hope there's a lot of trades. That's what I want to see.
All right, I've taken enough of your time, and wow, you gave us like the most information in the world. So play this one on repeat, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight here on Puck Talk CS. Thanks, Anthony.